and welcome. My name is Melissa Cooperschmidt, and I am the founder of Achieva Educational Consulting and a college counselor. Tonight, I'll be presenting Destination College Understanding Financial Aid. What is financial aid? Financial aid is money that's awarded to qualified students to assist them in paying for college. Financial aid has two components. It's need-based aid, and it's awarded by federal and state governments and colleges and universities. Types of financial aid include grants, scholarships, loans, and work study. How is financial aid determined? Financial aid is determined by the federal government and is based upon information that is submitted through the free application for federal student aid, also known as the FAFSA. Before a FAFSA can be completed, students and their parents must first obtain an individual FSA ID. The FSA ID is used to confirm the student's identity upon accessing his or her financial aid information and serves as an electronic signature on federal student aid documents and on loans. There's 3 ways to file a FAFSA. You can apply online, which is the recommended and the quickest way to get your application processed. You can complete a PDF of the FAFSA, and then you print it, you mail it, and then that will be processed by the Department of Education. Or you can request a paper copy at 1-800-FED-AID, and they'll mail you the paper copy, and then you'll complete it and mail it back for processing. Financial aid, the FAFSA, needs to be completed and submitted every year your student is in college. The FAFSA uses tax information submitted from the prior tax year and is available on October 1st. So for this year, those with seniors who plan to graduate in the spring and attend college next fall, the tax year that you will use is 2019. When completing the FAFSA, list at least one college your student will be applying to receive your information. The FAFSA allows you to list 10 schools. That's the maximum. However, that's the online version. The FAFSA PDF only allows 4 schools to be listed. So when the 11th school is added, the new school code will override a previous school code. The student chooses which school is replaced and the school is removed. That school will not have automatic access to any new information that is provided after it is removed. Colleges and universities listed on the student's FAFSA will use this information to determine the student's financial aid award. In addition to the FAFSA, some colleges and universities also require an additional form, which is called the CSS Profile, the CSS Financial Aid Profile. And/or they may also have institutional financial aid forms. You should always check the college's website for its required financial aid forms. Unlike the FAFSA, which is always free, there is a fee, a charge for each CSS profile that is requested by the student. Prior to starting your FAFSA and/or your CSS profile, students and their parents should gather information to make the process easier. This includes federal income tax forms, W-2s, and other earned money, records of all untaxed income, child support, retirement accounts, 529 accounts, benefits, information of which that you could assess the value of your house, bank and investment statements and trusts, and then property tax records for the house value. The federal government determines a student's estimated family contribution that is based upon the submitted FAFSA. It is very important to remember that the EFC is a per family contribution and not a per child contribution. So if you have more than one child in college during the same time, that EFC is for your whole family. The cost of attendance, which is the real and estimated cost to attend college for an academic year, minus the student's EFC, equals the student's eligibility for aid or the student's demonstrated need. Based upon the student's aid eligibility, the college will determine the type and amount of aid that the student will receive and will develop an award package that includes grants, scholarships, loans, and/or work study. So although the federal government determines the amount of aid, the individual college or university determines how that aid is awarded to each individual student. So what is included in the cost of attendance? It represents the majority of costs associated with attendance and includes tuition, fees, room and board, transportation, books and supplies, and personal expenses. To obtain an estimated cost of attendance from a college, students and their parents should use the college's net price calculator and the FAFSA forecaster. The link below is to the FAFSA forecaster. Colleges and universities are all required to offer a net price calculator on their website. Useful net price calculators will require similar detailed information that is used in the FAFSA and the CSS Profile. In general, they should have more than 5 questions, and that is the way to determine it. So while you're looking at schools, you'll also be able to determine if it's a financial probability for you. Remember to determine if a college is need blind or need aware. What does that mean? Need blind means when they look at your college, when they review your college application, they do not take into account if you need financial aid or not. A need aware school is a school that takes into account your financial aid need when evaluating your application for admissions. The other thing to remember is if a college meets 100% demonstrated need. Most colleges do not. Those colleges that do meet 100% of demonstrated need are generally highly selective schools. What does demonstrated need mean? Meaning that your FAFSA, it's determined that you're responsible for $50,000 of the cost of your attendance of the schools that you're applying to. So schools that meet 100% would give you a package that includes the $50,000. The second question to ask schools when you're asking if they meet 100% of demonstrated need is also to ask if their need includes loans. Schools that meet 100% of demonstrated need and don't include loans, most of those are also highly selective schools. And does the college gap students? What does that mean? That means if that same student has a $50,000 need, the college may not give them a package worth $50,000. So they give them a package worth $40,000. So that gap $10,000, the family would have to secure that money on their own. Always apply for aid early and accurately. Be mindful of all deadlines and look at the loan repayment amounts. Should not exceed 20% of a student's net income after college. What are the types of financial aid that may be awarded to your student? There are federal loans. Federal loans by far are the best loans to get, and certainly federal subsidized loans. Direct subsidized loan is a federal loan based on demonstrated need. It's for undergraduate students, and no interest occurs while the student is in school, at least part-time, as determined by taking 6 credit hours. A maximum amount a dependent student can borrow over a 4-year period is $19,000. It's important to understand that a subsidized loan means that while that loan is accruing interest, The student is not responsible to pay it until after they graduate college or they leave school. A direct unsubsidized loan is also a federal loan. It is not based on demonstrated need. It is also for undergraduate as well as graduate students, and interest will occur while the student is in school, and again, defined as at least part-time, 6 credit hours. The maximum amount a dependent child can borrow over 4 years is $27,000 plus $5,000 more for a 5th collegiate year. So understand that your interest is not being deferred. So you can roll that into the loan, but you are accruing it from the day you accept the loan. Other types of college student loans are state loans. They're offered by individual states and may offer better interest rates and terms. And then private loans are usually offered by a bank or a server with variable interest rates and fees. These loans should be considered at the very last resource and after everything else has been exhausted. They cannot be consolidated with federal loans, and they have different repayment terms. The last is a Parent Plus loan. A Parent Plus loan is a loan that is only in the parent's loan, unlike the previous loans that I just discussed, which would be in the student's loan. It allows parents to borrow up to the cost of attendance minus any awarded aid. That requires a FAFSA to be submitted and a current history check to be performed. And that begins repayment 60 days after the final disbursement, which may be well before your student completes his or her degree. This loan also allows for forbearance in terms of economic hardships and low deferments. So understand that when you pay for your student's college tuition, the bill, it is paid on a semester basis. So that usually for the fall semester can be due any time between late June to the beginning of August. And for the spring semester, you could receive that bill and it could be due anytime in December to sometime in January. So if you have a Parent Plus loan, you will actually have your last payment most likely prior to the start of your child's second semester senior year. Did you know? After the FAFSA is processed, the student will receive an award letter from each individual college or university detailing the amount of aid and the kind of aid that he or she has been offered. If the student is applying to multiple schools, it is important to compare award letters and to follow up with financial aid offices if additional aid is needed. And if your circumstances, your financial circumstances, have changed since you filed your FAFSA. What are the components of a financial aid award letter? The financial aid award letters indicate the dollar amounts per semester and the total for the academic year by individual element and may include federal, state, and/or institutional grants, scholarships, loans, and/or federal work study. Always review and compare financial aid award letters. Submit an appeal to request additional financial aid funding after the student receives a financial aid award. And reasons for appeal include unusual circumstances, negotiations, or a general appeal. What is an unusual circumstance? There's been a death of the parent. In this case, COVID, a loss of a job, those types of things. What are the elements of a scholarship search? Key elements of a scholarship search are start early, search often, and get organized. If you expect your child to fund their collegiate experience through college scholarships, it may be difficult. It depends on the school you go to. Most scholarships are $2,000 or less. The large scholarships that you hear about that are either full rides or $20,000 a year are certainly very competitive. Tens of thousands of students could apply for 5 or 10. Make sure that you have a targeted search so that the things that make you unique, be it maybe you're a first generation student, meaning you are the first generation in your family to go to college, not that you are a first generation American. Maybe it could be your race. It could be something about an individual club or activity that you are involved in. Define your strengths and unique attributes and determine beforehand the total amount of money that you'll need so that you can go to college. Use keywords in the search, such as foundation, scholarship, scholarships, grant, fellowships, and scholarship deadlines. Pursue smaller, lesser known, and local scholarships. Again, those scholarships are usually not reoccurring. It's a one-time award, generally $1,500, $1,500, $2,000. The typical amount, the COA, of a private school in the United States can range from $50,000 to $85,000 a year. So understanding the costs is very important so that you understand the amount of money that you will need. Always be mindful of deadlines, the terms of the scholarship, and the amount of the award, and if it's a single award or a reoccurring award. How can educational debt be managed? I think it's really important to talk to students, for parents and students to talk about how much educational debt they will take on. I also think very early on in the process, maybe in middle school, to start talking to your students about what their responsibility will be for college. It's important to develop a college list that has options, not only based on your preferences, but based on your finances. Planning early is key to managing your educational debt. Early in the process, students and parents should discuss how college should be financed and the proportion of that responsibility for the student. If the cost is a significant factor, plan accordingly to ensure that the student has many options as possible. And students should consider his or her short-term or long-term educational goals. The vast majority of students now do not end with their undergraduate degree. They are going on to graduate schools or professional schools. And so understanding the amount of money for your vocation is very important if undergraduate education is not your terminal degree. Here are some helpful resources. The Department of Labor has a repayment indicator for the amounts and how it can be construed. The Department of Labor also lists varying occupations with estimated salaries. So if you're planning to be a nurse, it's this much. If you're planning to be a teacher, so that you can have an idea of, is it really feasible for me to take $300,000 out in loans if my vocation, my starting salary is $30,000 a year? Will I be able to afford to live? The other thing I always like to mention is that the Maryland Higher Education Commission Academic Common Market. This is a great way for Maryland residents to have an out-of-state experience with another public school that participates in our common market. There are requirements. One requirement is that the major that's selected at the out-of-state school cannot be available at any institution within Maryland, higher education institution within Maryland, not just at the University of Maryland, College Park, not just at Salisbury University, not just at Bowie State, but any public institution of higher education in the state of Maryland. They are usually very major specific. So if that's something that you are interested in, for instance, at the University of Tennessee, one of the newest to join the academic common market, you need to be a business analytics major. So you need to make sure that your student is interested in the majors that are offered. If you are approved, you have to fill out a form. You have to complete it every year. That means you will get the equivalent of in-state tuition as an out-of-state student. So that could go from paying $50,000 a year to $25,000 a year, a big savings. Here's a little bit about my company. I started my company because I wanted to help students achieve their undergraduate college admissions goals. I do this by developing an individual organized, and cohesive plan to help the student through the stress of the college admissions process. It's not just about applying to college. It's about all the steps that go into it. It's about selecting your to creating and selecting your 4-year courses, to finding out what activities a student is involved in, to putting together the resume, and to really securing interesting summer experiences that complement the student's passion and that align with their educational interests. So if you need help and you're interested in working with Achieva, please feel free to contact me by phone, by email. Visit my website at achievaonline.com, or you can also view me on Twitter at achievaonline. My phone number is 301-461-8328. You can email me at achievaonline@gmail.com. And now I'd like to leave it open to address any questions that participants may have. Thank you again. Thank you for coming. And thank you, Parent Academy, for allowing me to be a part of this wonderful program.
Melissa, thank you for a wonderful presentation. Now, I do have 2 questions in the chat. They were asked a little earlier in the presentation. So I guess I'll ask these 2 questions, and anybody else, please feel free to jump in after. The first question was from Sarah, and she asked, can you repeat how many schools can receive the FAFSA report? What if you're applying to more than 10 schools?
So the FAFSA, if you're applying electronically, holds 10. So if you're applying to, let's say, 20 schools, after you submit it for the first 10, then you remove them and you add the new schools. So then you would remove the 10 after you've gotten the indication that they've gone through the application process and your FAFSA is complete. And then you would remove them, and then you would just add the additional 10.
Another question was, how do we apply for the CSS profile?
So the CSS profile is actually a business line on the College Board. So if you Google College Board, which are the people that bring you the AP, the SAT, you'll see on there that there will be a tab that says the CSS profile. So that's why you have to pay. It is not through the federal government. The College Board is a private nonprofit. So you would have to create an account and complete the CSS profile. I do refer to the CSS profile as a financial colonoscopy because you really will need all of that material with you. It is an excruciatingly very detailed form. The FAFSA has around 100 questions. It is very straightforward. If you file your taxes, your federal taxes electronically, you can use the IRS application to just actually direct. It's a retrieval tool. It will just directly repopulate your FAFSA. The CSS profile is pages and pages of information. I apologize, I don't remember the number of questions, but it takes a long time. So it better be prepared, have all your information, and the process will go smoother.
Thank you. We do have a couple more questions.
Sure.
Someone asked if we will be sharing this presentation. And I believe we have the emails of the parents that have signed up for this presentation. So if Melissa, you were to share your presentation with us, we can certainly email it out to parents.
The presentation will be on the Parent Academy's website, is my understanding. Is that correct? Like the recording of it?
Oh, yeah, the recording will be up. I'm not sure about the slides though. So that's why I mentioned that we can always share the presentation via email with parents. But the recording will certainly be at the Parent Academy to Go website, which I will list in the chat shortly. Another couple more questions that we have are, so for any school that you're applying to, do you have to list it in the FAFSA form?
If you want to be considered for federal financial aid, yes. Okay. If you are not planning to pursue federal financial aid, then no. And if you're not pursuing aid, then you wouldn't fill out either the FAFSA and or the CSS profile if the school requires it.
And I guess you answered the following question, which was, does it matter if you've listed schools that you don't end up applying to?
No, it does not. That school will receive the information. They will receive it. But if you don't submit an application, they won't review it.
Correct. Someone is wondering if you can show us an example of a financial award letter from a college.
I do not have one, I have to be honest with you, and every college has a little bit differently, but it will have those key components, and it will be a line item. One thing I wanted to include is that if your student is awarded work study, you actually have to earn that. There are work study jobs. There will be an Office of Work Study or Student Employment on your son or daughter's college campus. They need to contact that department. Usually universities have lists of work study approved jobs, and you have to work for that money. So if you receive a $2,500 work study amount, you have to earn the $2,500. So if you do not go and work at the job, then that amount you will not receive. That's a little different than the other components of the financial aid package.
Certainly. Now, someone else asked, what are your fees? But I don't know if that's perhaps a question that they can email you about.
Why don't you email me? And I'm happy to give you my hourly rate and to speak with you directly about packages that I have.
Thank you. And one more question we have is, what are some of the best places or websites to search for scholarships?
I have to be honest with you, I do not have a list of that. I think the best way actually to get scholarships is prior to COVID, the best way to get scholarships is to apply to schools where your test score, your ACT or SAT, which is a college entrance exam, where your test scores, when you look at the individual colleges, actually are above their top range. So for instance, if you're looking at a school, the ACT is at a 36, and that school reports that 50% of admitted students have between a 30 and a 34 on the ACT, and your child has a 35, then you would be in that top 25%. Getting merit aid from a school is probably the best way. Schools offer more merit aid. They are reoccurring every year. Some schools do have a GPA requirement for when you get to school. You have to maintain a certain overall GPA, but it is the best way. The other way to do it is to, when you get your awards, is to have schools that pull from similar populations geographically or close. They have similar students apply to similar schools. And if you've narrowed it down to those two schools, you can go back and request and say, school A gave me a little more. You are my top choice. Can you do any better? You can negotiate. But again, you need to do that in good faith. So you can't do this for every school that is on your list that you receive aid from. I really push my students to obtaining merit aid because, again, it is reoccurring. Some of the larger schools, some schools have very nice merit aid scholarships that make schools that you would think just based on their price, you would not be able to afford it. So look at it that a college cost is sort of the retail price, but when we shop, everyone gets discounts. And that's the way to look at it. So it's really important to think strategically when you're coming up, when your student is coming up with their college list, especially if finances are a top priority, that you need to get aid for your student to go to school.
And I wanted to say that your child counselor in high school is a great resource to ask for, websites where to go and search for scholarships. Especially
in high school, there's often a person that's dedicated just for career and scholarship purposes. So I would say, similar to what Josephina was sharing, I think they're definitely a good resource to contact.
Kelly is referring to the College and Career Coordinator. There is one College and Career Coordinator at every MCPS high school. That person will be able to help you. And They are a wonderful resource. Your guidance counselor may also have information. Usually those scholarships, again, are on the smaller side. So 1,000, 2,000, not necessarily reoccurring. But there are lots of resources within MCPS, and I do encourage students to take advantage of that. If you go to private school, there is most likely they're not going to call it a college and career coordinator, but they'll call it a college counselor or someone within the counseling department that can assist you.
And we have one more question. This is specifically for merit aid. And it says, do colleges ever run out of money to award to students based on the order of applications?
Yes, colleges usually have a finite amount of money, and that's why I say that it's important for you to get your paperwork in, your applications. You want to do things earlier than later. For instance, a great example is if your student decides to apply regular decision, that college may decide how they're going to award their merit aid. They may use it to secure folks from regular decision. They may use it in an early action or an early decision round. Each college has their own system, has their own requirements. They may use that merit aid to target specific students that have, again, the test score in SAT or ACT above their 25%. If that college's objectives and goals are to rise in the rankings. So every college does have individual objectives, and there's no reason for anyone to try to figure out what they are. That's not time well spent, but it is important to apply strategically, to understand what your individual preferences are, and then to select schools that meet those preferences. And again, if financial need is one of those preferences, then it really should be part of the list and part of the discussion.